Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode with the Crime and Coffee Couple. My name's Allison.
And my name's Mike.
Hello, Mike.
Hello, darling. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. For our new listeners, it seems like we just got a spattering of new listeners. Welcome. And we are the Crime and Coffee Couple. And like we said, that's Allison. This is Mike. We're just a little tiny Ma and Pa podcast. I'm Pa.
And I'm Ma.
Yeah. And so our listeners sometimes will refer to us as such. And we're not some part of some huge conglomerate network, which is fine if you like that sort of thing. If you like going to McDonald's every day, you're more than welcome to do so. But if you want to listen to a local little coffee shop type of podcast, that's us. So welcome. Allison delivers a new episode every single Sunday, and then there's bonus episodes on Wednesdays for our subscribers. So she's a huge true crime fan. She looks into some kind of crimes that she hasn't really heard a lot about. So not to say that you've never heard of them, but they're probably a little lesser known.
Yeah, and if you ever have a case you'd like to suggest, we do have a form over on our something.
Oh yeah, we definitely have it on our something.
Mike's the technical guy.
Yeah, Allison does the research, and everything you hear like content wise is from Allison, but I definitely do pretty much everything else.
Mike's the behind the scenes guy. He takes care of a lot. You might not realize that, but he really does.
Now since our son is doing our YouTube video editing, that has taken off a tremendous weight off my shoulders. But to answer your question, you can suggest episodes on Instagram. There's a link tree. There's it says link tree, so you just click on that. So go to Instagram. If you have anything to say to us, DM us on Instagram. That's probably our main spot for talking to fans.
Absolutely. So how's everything going with you?
Good. I've just mentioned that our son does our video editing, and before I was kind of groping you on the video.
Yes,
and
I was stretching and he touched me inappropriately.
Is it inappropriately, or is it are there women out there that are listening I wish my husband would touch me every once in a while? Or there's probably more saying I wish my husband would stop touching me.
I always say Mike has octopus hands. Yeah. It's like if I'm changing and I know he's headed my way, I got to hurry up and get changed. Otherwise, the octopus arms are going to come at me.
They do, and you're a little ticklish. So, so I was doing that, and I was like, oh no, our son's going to be watching this video because he's editing it. I'm like, son, your mom's a hussy, just so you know.
I said, I'm a hussy.
She's a hussy.
But hey, after 30 years of being together, the fact that you still like me, I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, I'm happy about that as well, and I'll show you.
And you know how you can show me that you love me is by getting me a Dutch Brothers coffee like you did. We have a new Dutch Brothers by us. I don't know if you guys have them by you. We did not before.
The first one.
What has been open for about a month. We've probably hit it a good 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, we were there the second day, I believe, just because we were at Starbucks across the street and we had ourselves a coffee, and then we're like, ooh, Dutch Brothers.
We were literally drinking lattes at Starbucks, gazing out at Dutch Brothers, and we're like, should we?
Yeah.
Sometimes we get a little coffee crazy.
Yeah, a little bit.
And when we're on vacation, we're like coffee addicts.
The lattes are flowing like the wine. I don't know, water.
Well, we used to drink. We've just passed 3 years of not drinking alcohol. We do still drink fluids.
I drink water.
I think we might die if we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But once we hit our 40s, we just realized that alcohol was just not fitting into our lives. We felt like hot garbage. I don't know if anyone can relate. But, in our 20s in college, we would sling them back. We'd recover just fine. Once we hit 40, it was like a 3-4 day hangover. I was like, no, thank you. So now my addiction is to coffee and lattes.
Yeah, sugar also. Don't forget ice creams.
Yeah, ever since I gave up alcohol, I do have more of a sweet tooth.
Oh,
I don't indulge it that often.
No.
We used to do Blizzard Sundays, and I was like, oh, maybe I really can't be doing this anymore.
Maybe that's not the healthiest thing.
Maybe not every Sunday.
No, but every once in a while, it's okay.
Every once in a while, 100%. Yeah. But we went away to the northern Georgia mountains. We live in Florida, if you're new to us. And so we just wanted a quick getaway because the kids had a couple of days off of school. So we're like, let's take the trip. Sometimes it's a pain in the butt because you got to pack and make the arrangements and spend the money. But then you never regret doing it because you're making those memories. And if you have teenagers, you know that they're off in their rooms doing their own thing. So sometimes you have to get away to spend that quality time together. But it's like we go away and we're like hitting all the local coffee shops, and we didn't once have ice cream when we were away.
I know, even though there were ice cream parlors. There was a place called Helen's Ice Cream Parlor or something like that, and it was so quaint. We visited the quaintest little town called Dahlonega.
Yeah,
and Dahlonega, just in case.
And if you're watching on YouTube, I actually got a sticker on my computer. But we pulled into this town, never hearing about it in our lives, and we got out of the car and we're like, "What the heck?"
Yeah. The only reason we heard of it is the cabin that we rented. We just kind of look on the map and we're like, okay, we want to go in this general area. Let's just do this one. And that they said the nearest town, like, make sure you stop there because there's nothing around us for like 25 minutes. This is the last town you hit before you get to the cabin. So we're like, all right, well, let's stop here. Let's get some dinner. And then let's, make our way to the cabin. And it was just like we stepped out. We're like in a Hallmark movie kind of thing. And if you've seen our Instagram, Allison loves her Christmas Hallmark movies.
I am addicted to Hallmark Christmas movies. So it was just like that. That's what I was thinking. And I'm sitting in the grass with our daughter and our dog. Mike's in the ramen place getting our takeout. And this older couple was commenting on our dog and we just got to chatting. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys live here? This is so beautiful. And they're like, yeah, actually this summer they filmed a handful of Hallmark Christmas movies.
Of course, they film them in the summer because they have those fake bubbles that go on top of everybody. And everybody's totally cool with it. We all know what we're getting out of the Hallmark Christmas movies.
One time I was watching one that was filmed in Chicago and they must have not removed this man because ahead you could see a guy on the sidewalk with shorts and a t-shirt on.
Yeah.
And it's like, everyone else is in winter gear and gloves and coats and hats. They must be sweating their...
And everybody's holding like a cup of cocoa or a cup of coffee. And it's like, I don't know if it's steaming, but they're always holding it. And they're always just like, oh yeah, that's good. Like, it's just like the coziest thing ever.
There was one that was filmed with the Chiefs football team last year. And I think Jenna Bush Hager was on it.
From the Today Show?
Yeah, from the Today Show. She had to make an announcement. Of course, she's in the super cute wool coat. She said it was about 97 degrees on the field when they filmed that scene.
It's ungodly. They shouldn't do that.
I mean, go up to like, I don't know, Alaska or something.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of them are filmed in Canada.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've gotten off topic too much. So we get back on track here and get into the story.
Let's do it.
I will give you a warning that this is a case that involves sexual assault of children. This is a dark case. I had actually never heard of this couple, but this is a listener suggestion from Jenna, and this is a story of Fred and Rose West. So some may have thought that Fred and Rose West were just a typical married couple who lived in England with their children, but this couldn't have been farther from the truth. Although they may have blended into their neighborhood along Cromwell Street, their home was a location of absolute horrific torture and murder. And you're looking at a husband and wife, and that gives you like this sense of security, especially when they have children. You think, okay, it's a normal family.
There's not many safer people to be around than a couple with some kids and stuff.
When you learn what this couple was doing to other young girls, it's so shocking. Not only just other young girls, but also some of their children.
I hate them already.
So Fred West would often make this sick joke to his children that if they misbehaved, they would end up under the patio, just as their 16-year-old sister, Heather West, had. So the last time anyone had seen Heather was 7 years earlier in June of 1987. The West children had always been told that their older sister had left home to work in southern England. But when they mentioned their father's flippant threat to social workers about this joke, this so-called joke about Heather being under the patio, authorities started to wonder, is there some truth behind what he's saying? So they ended up going to the West home at 25 Cromwell Street in Gloucester, England. And what they uncovered earned this home, this family home with so many kids, as the House of Horrors. And it exposed an unimaginable darkness that no one could have ever wrapped their heads around or imagined. So by the end of 1994, that's when the lid got blown off of everything. One missing daughter would become at least 12 victims between Fred and Rose West. These are married serial killers. And I always think in my head, how do people find each other? Like, it is incredible to me that one sick person can exist, but the fact that they could find their other sick mate and come together and wreak such havoc is just mind-blowing to me. So this couple went on a 2-decade killing spree between 1967 and 1987. They didn't meet until 1969, so 2 years before they met, Fred was doing his own thing on his own. So what makes this case even more disturbing is the fact that they somehow managed to get away with all of this violence in plain sight for so long undetected. So Fred and Rose, their sick and violent love affair began in early 1969 when a 27-year-old Fred West encouraged a much younger Rosemary or Rose Letts. So Rose had only just turned 15. She was a child.
Well, that's exactly what he's going after.
Absolutely. He wants someone that he can influence and really take control of. And that's exactly what he ended up doing. So they first crossed paths while they were waiting for the same bus. And initially, Rose was really put off by Fred's unkempt appearance, but he was someone that was very persistent and he was charming. So he was able to eventually break down her defenses and shower her with all this attention. And eventually she started to warm up to him. So despite the fact that Fred was nearly twice Rose's age, he began stopping by the bread shop where she worked. And when he asked her out for a date, she accepted. So being 12 years her senior, we're talking about someone that's almost 30 versus someone who's 15. There's huge gaps in life experience.
Yeah, we're not talking about a 50 to 65-year-old. This is like a big gap.
A huge gap. So at this point in time, Fred was actually married to a woman named Catherine who went by Rena, and this is Rena Costello. So he told Rose that his wife had left him a year before and he was left to care for their 2 daughters together. So those who had been familiar with Fred and Rena suspected that their relationship was very abusive on Rena's end. She was at the receiving end of the abuse. And they could tell that there was violence in the relationship because Rena often came around with black eyes or bruises on her body. And you can only make up excuses for so long. A person who's very young isn't falling down the stairs repeatedly and bumping their arm or hitting their head. So once the bruises continue to show up, people start to realize that there's more to it. So when the couple first met and went on to get married, Rena was actually pregnant by another man. She eventually gave birth to her daughter, Charmaine. This happened on February 22nd, 1963, and Charmaine never did know her biological father. So 1 year later then, Fred and Rena had their second daughter. This is Anne Marie. She was born in 1964. So the following year, the family of 4 moved from Rena's home city of Glasgow to be closer to Fred's hometown of Gloucester. So once now in England, Rena's away from her hometown, he began sexually abusing his young stepdaughter, Charmaine. And then his control and abuse towards Rena was only escalating at this point in time. So when Rena escaped Fred, though, she sadly left her 2 daughters behind. So now a single father of 2 young daughters, this is 6-year-old Charmaine and a 5-year-old Anne Marie, they started to spend time in and out of social services until 1969 when Fred came across a 15-year-old Rose. So only weeks after their meeting, he convinced her to come with him to work as a full-time nanny to his daughters. So when Rose first moved in, they were initially living in a caravan, and then they eventually moved into their home on Midland Road in Gloucester.
What's a caravan?
I don't know. I don't know if it's like a trailer type of situation.
Probably. Yeah.
So sadly, though, bringing Rose into this situation did not help the girls at all because Rose herself was a very violent person.
Crazy how they found each other, like you said earlier. Like, I don't know. He must have sensed it somehow.
And she's only 15 years old at this point in time. Yeah. So really soon after her arrival, she started to regularly beat these 2 young girls.
Jeez.
So tragically, this behavior was something that they had sadly been accustomed to because they had often been subjected to cruel treatment. I mean, Charmaine was being sexually abused by her stepfather.
I mean, what the hell's the matter with Rena, the mom that just left her, the kids there? Like, terrible mother. Great job.
I understand that she was subjected to a lot of abuse.
Yeah, but you had your kids. Like,
you can't leave your 2 innocent children in the hands of someone that you know is terribly abusive.
Yeah, way to go, Rena.
So he would often cage them into bunk beds and then only allow them to come out when he was at work. So because of all this abuse, these young girls rarely were allowed to leave their house to socialize. They were basically going to school and then they were prisoners of their own home. Ugh. And God forbid they were unable to complete their list of daily chores. Boy, oh boy, would they suffer the punishment. So since Anne Marie was said to be more submissive because she's the younger sister, she received far less abuse than Charmaine had. So Fred and Rose had their first child together. This was when Heather Ann West was born on October 17th, 1970. This is the child in question that I mentioned at the beginning of the story that Fred would flippantly say that Heather was under the patio. So only 2 months later, though, Fred was in prison for theft. This happened in December of 1970, and he remained behind bars through June of 1971. So this left a 17-year-old Rose to care for their 3 young daughters. So after Rose took Charmaine, Anne Marie, and Heather to visit Fred in prison in June of 1971, 8-year-old Charmaine suddenly vanished, never to be seen again. So after she disappeared, Rose started concocting stories because, of course, she had to cover where was the daughter that always lived with them. So she started telling people that Rena had come to collect her eldest daughter to live with her in Bristol. But she wasn't keeping her story straight because when she spoke to teachers at Charmaine's school, she would tell them that she was living with Rena in London. So she was giving, mixed messages here. And anytime somebody's telling different stories, it's likely not the truth.
Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret, with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going through. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period for 3 months at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
So, of course, when Anne-Marie came home, this is Charmaine's little sister, who probably took great comfort in having her older sister there because I'm sure she acted to protect her. She suddenly comes home and finds that her sister isn't there. So she's left to only hear what Rose has to say, that, Rena suddenly came. And I'm sure that made Anne-Marie feel terrible because why hadn't her mom come to take her?
Yeah, why didn't she pick me too?
But she had no choice but to question or to believe it because she knew better than to question Rose. She knew what would happen if she did.
Yeah.
So, sadly, not only did Charmaine go missing that year, but Rena herself would also go missing. So because Charmaine refused to accept Rose as her mother, she was often at the receiving end of Rose's physical and emotional abuse. She was once heard saying, "My real mummy would never swear or shout at us." So this was something that enraged Rose because she just wanted a compliant child to do whatever it was that she wanted. She didn't want anyone to fight her. So a neighbor once said that they saw Charmaine standing naked on a chair, gagged with her hands bound, as Rose stood next to her with a wooden spoon in hand. And I will say the obvious here, if you see a child being abused like this neighbor saw, please say something.
Yeah, I think it was a different time, obviously. Like, people would just stick to themselves. And that, abuse of children wasn't really even a thing. Like, it's at certain points in time, right? Like,
it was like, oh, you're going to get a whooping. Like, that would be set out in the public and no one would bat an eye at that.
Yeah, there's people that are very proud being like, yeah, my parents used to hit me and I'm fine. It's like, okay, well, congratulations, but it's not right.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's like a cultural thing or situational where you live, that certain places think it's okay to like whoop or spank or whatever. I'm just not that person. I feel like spanking a child is like an adult tantrum.
It 100% is. And if you think otherwise, then you're wrong.
So investigators came to theorize that while Rose was left to care for her 3 young girls, because of course, again, she's only like 17 years old at this time, that she murdered Charmaine sometime shortly before Fred was released. So he was released from prison on June 24th, 1971. They know that Charmaine went to the prison to visit Fred 9 days earlier. They all went there on June 15th. So sometime between June 15th and June 24th is when Charmaine disappeared. So it's likely that Rose murdered Charmaine in a fit of rage and kept her body in the coal cellar at home on Midland Road until Fred was released and able to basically handle Charmaine's remains. So the exact circumstances of Charmaine's murder will likely never be known, but after Rose murdered and concealed this little child, Fred came home, he dismembered her remains, and he buried her under the kitchen floor of their home.
That's crazy, doing that to your own child.
I know.
Insane.
And granted, he was not her biological father,
Right.
but he was the only father she ever knew.
Like any child, it's like, I don't know. Crazy.
There's nothing more innocent than a child because they are born and they see the world as nothing but kindness and beauty, and it's the jaded thoughts around them that change them. And that's why when our kids were small, like never would I swear in front of them. And I have a mouth like a truck driver sometimes,
yeah.
but I never wanted to tarnish that innocence.
Right.
You know, we want to protect our kids, and not to a fault. As they get older, they have to realize that the world has some darkness in it in order to protect them.
Yeah, welcome to teenage years. You're going to now know some of the secrets that we've been hiding for years.
Right. So, you know, it's just sick because this horrible act of violence somehow brought this couple closer together. So sadly, the abuse within the household, it only continued. And now that Charmaine was no longer there on the receiving end, the violence was focused on Anne Marie. So in 1972, when she was as young as 8 years old, Fred restrained and raped his daughter. So rather than stepping in to help, Rose only stood by and actually encouraged him. She even helped him by forcefully removing the young girl's clothing. So when the attack was over, Rose allegedly told her, "I'm sorry, everybody does it to every girl. It's a father's job. Don't worry and don't say anything to anybody." Can you imagine how confusing this must be to an 8-year-old child?
I mean, her whole life is hell. So it's just another cherry on the top, unfortunately.
It's so sad. So that same year, Fred and an 18-year-old Rose, they were officially married on January 29th, 1972, and only months later, they settled into their new home at 25 Cromwell Street in Gloucester. This is a location that had rows of terrace homes, so there's a lot of houses here. We're not talking the countryside where there's sprawling land between each home. So when I tell you that all of this horror went on, they were right there with other neighbors around. So this was the place that was later dubbed the House of Horrors by the media. So, by the way, Gloucester, like you look at that word on paper, it's not Gloucester.
Gloucestershire, probably,
it's like
right?
Gloucester.
Yeah. Oh, there's no Shire. Okay.
No,
okay.
not on that one, Gloucester. So I had to make sure I said that in my head about 15 times so that I didn't look like an absolute ninny.
It's kind of like Worcester in Massachusetts.
Yeah, there's so many. It's like, why do you do this? Why do you spell it like that if it's not pronounced like that? So there was a hint at the darkness that was happening between the couple when just shy of their first wedding anniversary, Fred and Rose were actually convicted of assault occasioning actual bodily harm and indecent assault for kidnapping a girl on January 12th, 1973.
Did you say assault occasionally?
Assault occasioning actual bodily harm.
What is occasioning?
I don't know. I'm just doing the research, and that's what they were convicted of.
I mean, it's probably like an English thing. Okay.
Yeah, it must be. So this should have been a hint that something dark was happening here between this couple, but sadly, it all kind of falls to shambles. So this happened to a girl named Caroline Owens. She was actually a young woman who worked for Fred and Rose as a nanny for a short period of time in late 1972.
Well, that's how Rose came in. So I'm sure they were probably trying to bring her in or whatever, being like, hey, what do you feel? How do you feel about serial killing and murdering and sexual assault?
No, she was going to be one of their victims.
Okay.
So she was out hitchhiking on December 6, 1972, and when the couple picked her up and they brought her back to their home, and they basically kept her as a prisoner and sexually assaulted her. Ugh. So after she managed to escape, she did go to police, but when the case went to court, she was unable to face the ordeal of testifying, so all the charges were dropped. Because we're talking about a young girl here who is scared and traumatized.
I'm sure they said plenty of things to her, too. If you ever talk about this, we're going to kill you. And your
absolutely.
Family or
so after Fred and Rose agreed to plead guilty to reduced charges, they were each fined 25 pounds. And the case was basically forgotten.
That's it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's like, what a joke.
Yeah, $25. Oh, you're good. Good luck.
Slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
So basically, everything was basically forgotten, and this allowed them to continue on with their violent ways. So as Anne Marie entered her teenage years, the abuse and torment against her, it only escalated. So Rose continued to assist her husband. She would bind Anne Marie to furniture so that Fred was free to do whatever he wished with his daughter. So when she did her chores, they would force her to wear a sexual device. These people are sick. So beginning at age 13, Fred and Rose forced Anne Marie to solicit her body for sex. This was something that Rose was already doing out of their home at Fred's encouragement. So he bugged their bedroom with a listening device so that while Rose was off with her, customer, he would be in the next room listening to what was happening. So Anne Marie was instructed to tell these men who came into their home that she was 16 years old, not 13. So by the time she was 15 years old in 1979, she had had enough and she actually ran away from home. She escaped this horrific abusive life.
Wow, good for her.
So between 1970 and 1983, Rose and Fred had 7 more children together in addition to Heather.
7 more?
Yes.
Holy cow.
So they had May, Stephen, Tara, Louise, Barry, Rosemary Jr., and Luciana. I will tell you, though, that some of these children, specifically the younger ones, this is specifically Tara, Louise, Rosemary, and Luciana, they were likely fathered by other men other than Fred because Rose was inviting all these men into their home. She was actively working as a sex worker. So sadly, like Anne Marie, Fred also sexually molested Heather, May, and Louise on many, many occasions, sometimes on a daily basis.
Jeez.
So Rose also continued to have violent outbursts that were directed at their children. I read one article where Stephen said that once his mom got going on her physical abuse, she couldn't stop herself. She just kept pummeling. So sometimes their injuries would be so brutal that they ended up at a local hospital to be treated. And I'm sure they just came up with some story. Oh, they fell down or whatever. So in the midst of living in constant fear, there were also moments of normalcy where the family ate meals and watched TV together. I watched home movies where they were out at this park riding bikes and they looked normal. And that's the scariest part of it, is that all that darkness and violence and abuse was hiding underneath a normal family picture on the outside.
Like kids smiling and everything and having a good time? Gosh.
Because they're children and they want to be children and they want to be free and to be happy. So when they saw these glimmers of normalcy, they probably grabbed onto them. So they would do normal things together. They would celebrate birthdays and holidays. They would go on family vacations. According to a memoir that was written by Mae West in 2018, she remembers the superb cupcakes that her mother would bake. So she would do normal motherly things in the kitchen. She would make birthday cakes for them that they all enjoyed together. On certain days, there were glimmers of feeling just like any other family, but those glimmers would vanish at the drop of a hat. And these moments of peace and normalcy, they were unfortunately very short-lived. As Fred and Rose, they opened their home at 25 Cromwell Street to young teenage girls. They rented these rooms on the top floor of their home. So when investigators later spoke with a few of these ex-tenants, thankfully they got out unharmed. They described the house as a strange place where men were often coming and going, very atypical for a family home to have these strange men coming and going. So these young tenants were often girls. They came from care homes or they had been out backpacking. They may have been in a vulnerable situation. Just being a teenager out by yourself, you're vulnerable.
Sure.
But some of them had run away from home and they were looking for a place to stay. So beginning in 1967, 2 years before Fred met Rose, he abducted, raped, and murdered at least in total, even with Rose, 12 young women. So Rose participated in about 10 of these cases.
So also like murdered them all, not just like one of those things, but every single one of those things.
We're talking about horrible sexual assault, torture,
12,
then murder.
So to 12 girls.
12 girls.
That's crazy.
Insane. And we're talking again about a street where they lived that has rows and rows of terraced homes.
Wow.
And that's what makes me think sometimes, like, you never know what you're looking at online, on Instagram, anything. You never know what's lying beneath the surface.
Yeah, the real stuff is deep.
Right. And I am somebody that always likes to be a trusting person or something. But, you know, when you host a true crime podcast, you basically think everyone's a sick murderer.
Right.
So, you know, just the fact that all of this was happening in plain sight. When Rose and Fred were together, it happened for a course of about 16 years. So again, they went on to torture, sexually abuse, and murder. So together, they did about 8 cases. So they would bury these girls' remains around their property in the aftermath of all this abuse. So being the eldest of the children, Heather was trying to stop her parents' abuse. She was confiding in certain people, maybe a friend, about what was going on within their household. She also tried her best to distance herself from the dysfunction, abuse, and darkness. So after she dropped out of school, she was applying for jobs out of town, hoping and praying that she would get hired so that she could escape and then have a job and the financial stability to live on her own.
Be like, oh, whoops, I got a job far away. I guess I got to go get it.
So sadly, in 1987, she was not selected for a maid's position at a resort in Torquay. Had she been hired, this would have saved her life because she would have escaped. So the last time Heather was ever seen alive was on June 19th, 1987. So when her siblings came home that day, it's very familiar to what happened with Charmaine's death. Anne Marie came home. They had a story. Same thing happened with the West children. They come home from school one day. Heather's not there. They're told that their sister went to work in southern England. And they initially believed their parents. Why wouldn't they? They knew that their sister was applying for jobs out of town. But then they started to doubt the story because they were writing her letters, trying to get in touch with her, calling her. Heather was never responding. This wasn't like her. That's when they started to have these little niggles of doubt in their mind. So in May of 1992, after 13-year-old Louise was continuously raped by her father over the course of weeks, one occasion of which Fred actually filmed, she finally worked up the courage. She was probably so just tortured and desperate at this point in time that she confided in a close friend about what was happening. Thankfully, this friend told their mother, and their mother anonymously informed the police. So although a search of the home in August of 1992 found objects of sexual paraphernalia as well as pornographic videos, we know that these things are not illegal. They did not find the tape of Louise's attack because that's what she told her friend. My dad did this to me and he filmed it. So Louise gave a full statement, and that is so brave as such a young girl.
Yeah.
And she described her father's abuse, which began when she was as young as 11 years old, as well as the fact that her mother had been aware. So medical examinations revealed evidence of abuse, and all of the children in the household, thankfully, were transitioned to foster care the following day. So the West children told investigators that their mother had inflicted most of the physical abuse and that their father often made this flippant threat that if they told anyone, they would be buried under the patio like their sister Heather. So these comments finally prompted an investigation which unveiled the true horrors of Fred and Rose West. So upon hearing that their father was awaiting trial, Anne Marie gets word of this. So she's the one that had escaped 13 years earlier in 1979. So she came forward to detail the extensive physical and sexual and mental abuse that she endured as a child at the hands of both her father and stepmother.
And I wish she would have came clean about it earlier. Not clean, but
right.
Brought it up to somebody's attention because, I mean, she had an opportunity for years and years. She knew the abuse. She lived it, unfortunately. And she knew all these other kids, her siblings or half siblings or whatever, were going through the same thing.
In her defense, she was, subjected to things people can't wrap their heads around.
Yeah,
at such a young age, she was raised in a horrifying environment. She escaped at age 15 after she had been put into sex work and exposed to things that no teenager should ever have to be exposed to. So you have to remember that.
For sure. And like me with these stories, like I try to forget them as soon as I hear them.
Mm-hmm.
And, living the actual stories has got to be a whole different ballgame. It's like you can question things or whatever, but yeah, not her fault. Maybe she's trying to wipe it out of her head, not think of it ever again, and just get away from there.
Right. But then, of course, she did come forward to talk about this.
Which is good.
So then, Anne Marie and Louise, though they're young, you just have to remember that. They declined to testify at the court case on June 7th, 1993. The case against Rose and Fred collapsed because of this, which to me is ridiculous. Because when you're asking two young victims to come into court and testify, they found evidence that Louise was abused. Why isn't that enough?
I don't know. Yeah, you need as much as you can to put people away, right? And I know in Europe it's harder to put people away for longer. So I don't know.
I just think they could have done better because had they talked to the other siblings, they would have all detailed the accounts of what happened. So Anne Marie chose to withdraw her statement because of her younger siblings' distress at the whole situation, as well as her fear of Rose's retaliation. I will tell you, in reading various memoirs and such, the kids were very afraid to go to adults and confide in them about what was happening because they thought about the big picture and what it would mean for them if they would all be separated and brought into different foster homes. Would there be abuse in those homes? There was a lot of risk there and a lot of fear.
Do you know how old Anne Marie is at this point?
Anne Marie was 15 in 1979, and this is 1993. And my brain does not compute math, so don't even expect me to do it.
She's an adult. She's a full-on adult. So it's I don't know, man. I kind of wish Anne Marie would step up to the plate.
She was an adult that was traumatized.
For sure.
So you just have to remember that.
But these people need to be put away because they're going to keep on doing it to your siblings and other people. They're only going to find other people. And this freaking Fred, he's going to go kill more women, like young women, and find, I don't know, man. He's a monster.
He's a monster. So the point is that the case started to collapse because of fear. These girls were so scared. She did bring attention to the fact that she had been unable to find her half-sisters, Charmaine and Heather, or her mother, Rena. So she was saying, there's more going on here. I can't find these people. So the Wests were acquitted of all charges, but all of their younger children remained in foster care with permitted supervised visitations to Cromwell Street. However, police continued to search for missing Heather, noting that there were no records, no proof of life that she existed after this point in 1987. They also retraced Fred's history and the fact that neither Charmaine nor Rena, who each vanished in 1971, had a missing person report filed on either of them. That is very alarming. When an 8-year-old child goes missing and no one has reported it, something's going on. So the investigators were convinced that Heather was deceased and reflected on Fred's repeated statements to his children, because it wasn't just one child that said this. They would say, "This is what my dad says. We're going to go under the patio like Heather." So although it was disguised as a flippant joke, they started to question this might be very true. But would somebody be dumb enough to say such a thing?
Hope so. If
they buried their daughter under a patio, would they go around saying it as a flippant joke? You know, if you're Fred West, yeah, you would. So on February 25th, 1994, after police obtained a search warrant for their home and planned to excavate the yard, Fred, who was aware now that he was going to be caught, they were digging it up. He finally admitted that he was responsible for Heather's death. He confessed to strangling Heather in a fit of rage. Although he would change his story, sometimes he would say he never meant to hurt her. He just didn't want her to leave.
Okay.
So he contradicts himself a lot.
I don't care what he says.
So he strangles her. Then he dismembered her body with a heavy serrated knife in the ground floor bathroom, and then he buried her remains. This is his child.
Yeah, so sad.
Heather's remains were recovered the following day after she had been missing for nearly 7 years. She had been found under the patio, exactly where Fred had threatened all along that she could be found. So when 52-year-old Fred was taken into custody, he was initially reluctant to talk, and he was assigned to a designated appropriate adult as he was barely literate and he had learning difficulties. We know that the law is a complex thing. So this person, this is 38-year-old Janet Leach. She was a social worker and a mother of 5 that was basically assigned to him to help him understand the legal process, to be sure that there weren't any kind of caveats where it's like, oh, he didn't understand his rights.
So they want to make sure to be able to get him.
Right. So Fred quickly connected to this woman, and even before he confessed to police, he told Janet what he had done to his daughter. So she was shocked at the matter-of-fact way that he spoke about what he had done to his own child, as if he was talking about like a vacation or the weather.
Yeah.
So after Fred was formally charged with his daughter's murder, because of course they found Heather's remains under that patio, police found a third thigh bone. So now they're realizing there's more to this than just Heather.
Yeah.
So, of course, they say, Fred, we found a third thigh bone. What is going on here? He indicated it belonged to an 18-year-old girl named Shirley Robinson. Shirley had been a tenant at 25 Cromwell Street. She became Fred's lover while she was living there. So according to Fred, when she threatened to tell Rose that she was pregnant with his baby during a time that Rose was actually at the hospital recovering from giving birth herself, he struck her in the jaw and then strangled her. So she was last seen in May of 1978. At the time, she was 8 months pregnant. She and her unborn child were found buried in the garden at the West's home.
Jeez.
So when Fred was speaking of Shirley, he's a moron, and he slipped and said to investigators that her death made 3. And then he quickly backtracked and tried to correct himself and say, oh, sorry, that's 2, not 3. So from here, he very gradually began to confess because the guys, that he's talking to, these investigators, they're like, look, Fred, we're going to dig up this place. You may as well just tell us what's going on.
Tell us what we're going to find.
So in total, he confessed to 12 murders, but only after he was threatened that they were going to dig up the entire house. And they specifically mentioned the cellar. So he only did it because he knew he was caught. So Fred helped investigators locate the remains of all 12 female victims, although he would later recant his admissions of guilt. Like I said, he was, a flip-flopper. So while he spoke with police, he tried to protect Rose. So he's sitting there telling these investigators that Rose knew nothing about what happened. We're talking about torture, murder, dismemberment of 12 people. So obviously the investigators are like, that's hogwash, poppycock.
Yeah, all those things.
All of those things. He's saying she didn't know that Heather was killed. So when Rose learned of her husband's confessions, she denied any involvement and she started to greatly distance herself from her husband. So investigators learned that after Fred's first wife, Rena, left him, she did maintain sporadic contact with Charmaine and Anne Marie. So in August of 1971, she was given Fred's address on Midland Road, and she likely went to that home to demand custody of Charmaine and Anne Marie. She didn't realize at that point in time that Charmaine had actually been missing for 2 months. So authorities believe that after she went to this house, she was strangled in the back of Fred's car. She was then dismembered, and her remains were placed into plastic bags before they were buried. When her remains were eventually discovered on April 11th, 1994, there was a small red boomerang and a piece of metal piping in her grave.
Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret, with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going through. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period for 3 months at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
The secret is out. With millions of younger-looking customers across the country, Plexiderm is one of the most highly sought-after products on the market. It visibly shrinks under-eye bags and smooths out crow's feet in minutes, and the effects last up to 10 hours. Influencers love it, magazines feature it, and people just can't get enough of it. As a matter of fact, Elle Magazine gave it an Editor's Choice Award as Best Instant Wrinkle Filler for 2025. In as little as 10 minutes, Plexiderm reduces the appearance of fine lines, wrinkles, and those dreaded under-eye bags. So yes, you can look years younger in minutes, and the effects last for hours. No surgery, no gimmicks, just results. The best news, you can try Plexiderm for only $14.95. Plus, get free shipping. Don't wait. Order Plexiderm today. Visit Plexiderm.com/special. That's Plexiderm.com/special. Paid for by Sheer Science.
So Fred admitted to being responsible for 11 victims, but he never admitted involvement in the murder of an 18-year-old girl named Ann McFall. And this is despite the fact that he showed investigators where her remains could be found. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I didn't kill her, but I know where her dead body is.
How absolutely silly is that? So Anne was Charmaine and Anne Marie's nanny during his first marriage with Rena. So she is believed to have been his first victim in July of 1967. Again, this is 2 years before he met Rose. So it's speculated that she had an affair with him while Rena was away. And when she vanished, she was also pregnant, about 6 to 7 months, just like Shirley had been. So when Anne and her unborn baby's remains were recovered on June 7th, 1994, they found that her wrists were bound with a length of cord. So when I'm saying 12 victims, it's more than that because 2 of these girls were pregnant.
And like everybody's getting pregnant in this house. There's like the fertile city. Like you got kids popping out everywhere. And unfortunately, a lot of them not making it because there's so much sex going on. Like this guy was obsessed with just
an addict.
Crazy.
So in addition to the deaths of Ann McFall, Rose and Fred were also responsible for the murders of 8-year-old Charmaine, 16-year-old Heather, again, those are their children, and 27-year-old Rena Costello. So there were also 8 other victims, 19-year-old Linda Go, 15-year-old Carol Ann Cooper, 21-year-old Lucy Partington, 21-year-old Therese Seingenthaler, 15-year-old Shirley Hubbard, 18-year-old Juanita Mott, 18-year-old Shirley Robinson, and 16-year-old Allison Chambers.
That is insane, and they all deserve to have their names said.
How sad is that all of these young girls, they all had lives. They all had parents and family that cared about them. Yeah, they may have been going through some teenage rebellious streaks, perhaps. They wanted to get away, spread their wings. They had people that were looking for them and who loved them. This is just a tragedy. So despite the fact that Fred insisted that Rose was innocent, which is so ridiculous, investigators suspected otherwise because they knew it would have been impossible to turn a blind eye to what was going on in that house. So she was arrested on April 20th, 1994. A detective was sent to speak with Caroline Owens. This is the girl who was the nanny who was picked up in their car and taken back to their home and then sexually assaulted by the couple, not just Fred. And this happened on December 6, 1972. And that's why Rose can't continue to say that she didn't know what was going on because Anne Marie said otherwise, Louise said otherwise, Carolyn said otherwise. So they threatened that they were going to murder her and bury her in the garden. And thankfully, Carolyn was able to escape. But this paints a picture of what detectives know happened in all these other cases. This is exactly what happened.
And they're finding out about this and being like, no way. Did they do this together? Like, they're shaking their heads because for me, this is the first time I've ever heard about anything like this. This is crazy.
And the sad part was the case collapsed against them in 1973 in terms of Carolyn because she was absolutely traumatized and she just didn't want to face, testifying against them. And they went on to kill until 1987. So it's just sad that they could have been stopped, but they weren't.
Yeah.
So by May 6th, the couple was jointly charged with 5 counts of murder. But then on June 30th, Fred was charged with 12 murders. Rose was charged with 9. This eventually went up to 10. So investigators also believe Fred is linked to 15-year-old Mary Bathsom's disappearance. So this was something he wasn't charged with, but they suspect he was responsible. The point of this is he might be responsible for a slew of more murders that we just don't know about.
Yeah.
So Mary was working at a cafe in Gloucester, when she vanished in 1968. So her remains have never been found. Her case remains unsolved. So while he was held at HM Prison, Birmingham, in the months after his arrest, Fred became increasingly depressed and unable to cope with the fact that his wife, who he basically said he was able to mold and shape into the person that he wanted her to be, hence the reason why he was 27 years old and he went with a 15-year-old, a new 15-year-old. So he couldn't cope with the fact that now Rose was turning on him. She wanted nothing to do with him. So on New Year's Day, January 1st, 1995, 53-year-old Fred West was found to have asphyxiated himself in his jail cell. So he basically constructed a blanket into a rope and hung himself.
Oh, good. I mean, that's fantastic.
So his death was ruled a suicide, and it's likely that he couldn't stand the idea of facing his crimes, paired with the fact that his wife was willing to let him take responsibility for everything. And the fact, like I said, that she so easily just tossed him aside. So, he's looking at it like, oh, it's us against the world. And apparently not.
Nope, just you.
So he took the coward's way out to avoid facing justice for all of this horrible things that he had done. He just took the coward's way out.
Yeah, you would like him to go through a lot of torture and pain, but unfortunately, there's no official way to torture anybody. So I think really just him killing himself is probably the best for all of society.
In the way that I see it too is obviously every victim deserves justice, but the sad thing is the justice doesn't bring that person back. But, we all know that Fred was responsible for all of this.
Yeah, the best case scenario is that he can't do it again. And once he kills himself, he's gone. So that's fantastic.
So Rose West went on to plead not guilty to 10 charges of murder. And her defense basically maintained this ridiculous story that she just had no idea what was going on in her house, despite the fact that everyone else is saying, no, mom knew, she was in on this abuse.
Now, she's a piece of garbage, but she was also groomed from a young age by Fred. And it's he's probably made it normal to her, brought her into his home, is like, yeah, so just so you know, you can nanny my kids, but I beat the crap out of them. And you can do the same thing, watch, and it smacks them, Then she's like, oh, okay, and then whatever. It's not okay.
No, and at 15 years old, what the hell are you beating up 2 little kids?
Oh, clearly you have some problems.
She obviously had a horrible upbringing. Yeah. So Rose's trial lasted more than a month. In November of 1995, Mike, what do you think the jury came back with?
Guilty.
Yes.
And she's going to have life in prison of 3 years.
So the jury returned unanimous guilty verdicts for all 10 murders, and she became the UK's second woman in modern times to be given life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Oh.
And she is still in prison to this day.
Wow, you never hear that. Okay.
So 9 of the 12 victims' remains were recovered at that one home, that House of Horrors, 25 Cromwell Street. So this all happened in 1994 when everything, like I said, the lid was blown off because of the children's reports. My dad threatens that we'll end up like Heather under the patio. So they were all uncovered during the investigation into the disappearance of Heather West. So Charmaine West, this is Fred's stepdaughter, she was recovered on May 4th, 1994 at 25 Midland Road, the home that they shared before they moved into the House of Horrors on Cromwell Street. Her mom, Rena Costello, as well as 18-year-old Anne McFall, they were found buried in 2 fields near the village of Muchmarkle. This is where Fred grew up. So otherwise, everyone else was found at this house on Cromwell Street. So all of the bodies had been stuffed into cramped holes, jumbled anatomically. The victims had been decapitated. They were missing many bones. They were treated like nothing. And that is so, so sad. Because of the way that they were found, no cause of death could truly be established. I believe strangulation was the cause of death with most of these girls. So there were remnants of masks or bindings on the heads of 7 of the victims. Some of the masks consisted of tape that hadn't decomposed over the years. They had been wrapped around the victim's skull. Evidence within their graves proved that these victims had been brutally tortured before their eventual murders. There were beams in the cellar of the home, and mind you, they lived with about 10 children in this home. So in the cellar, there were these beams, and they found that there were holes drilled in them. They were consistent with the victims being strung up while they were beaten, raped, and tortured. The horrifying picture painted images of sadistic sexual abuse that resulted in the lives of these young victims ending. We're talking about 15 and 16-year-old girls. So in some of the police tapes, Fred denied the deaths being intentional.
Right.
He indicated that the sex was just fun, and it somehow just all went wrong. He basically described it as enjoyment turned into disaster. So some of these victims, who again were as young as 15 years old, they were picked up while they were out hitchhiking or waiting at the bus stop. Some of them were offered a room at their home while they worked as a nanny for them. And again, I will say, these girls were approached by a father and a husband and a wife. who was a mother. So they have this sense of security, because what kind of torture would happen in a house with 10 kids?
Like if it was just a single guy, you'd probably have your radar up a little bit, but like, oh, husband and wife with plenty of kids.
Right.
Yeah, sounds safe.
So I think they used that image to lure these girls into a sense of safety. So the 20-year killing spree began in 1967, 2 years before Fred met Rose, beginning with Fred's pregnant teenage mistress, Ann McFall, and ending with Heather's murder in 1987, his own daughter. So in another interview, Fred referred to a student, this is 19-year-old Linda Go, one of their victims, as the first victim to be murdered for sexual satisfaction, which is just, again, him completely contradicting himself, because he said it was sex gone wrong. Yeah. He said she was killed for sexual satisfaction. So when she vanished in April of 1973, her parents reported her missing. She likely died, like most of the victims, from strangulation and suffocation. So Linda's mom, she went to Rose and Fred's house looking for her daughter. Rose answered the door. She told her that she had left, but her mom couldn't help but notice that Rose is standing at the door wearing Linda's slippers, and meanwhile, Linda's clothes are hanging on the line. So Linda's remains were found in a former car inspection pit in a garage that had been converted into a bathroom at 25 Cromwell Street. 15-year-old Carol Ann Cooper, she vanished in November of 1973 when she was staying at the Pine Children's Home. She had been given permission to spend the weekend with her grandmother. She disappeared after she boarded a bus back to the home after a night out on November 10th. Because remember, I said some of these girls were just waiting at the bus stop. And that's exactly how he found Rose. So extensive searches were unable to track her down. Her body was found in the cellar at 25 Cromwell Street. Detectives concluded that the Wests picked her up while she was out hitchhiking. So 21-year-old Lucy Partington, she was home for Christmas break from Exeter University, and on December 27th, 1973, just days after Christmas, she disappeared while she was waiting for a bus to her home in Gretton. Her mother reported her missing, and a massive search ensued, but they couldn't find her. Her remains were found beneath the floor at 25 Cromwell Street. There was a knife found in her grave. 21-year-old Therese Seingenthaler was a Swiss student who was attending college in London. She vanished at Easter in 1974 after she was out hitchhiking. She was heading to Ireland to visit a friend who was a priest. She never made it to Ireland, and despite an investigation that spanned a number of years, she was never found. Her remains were located, again, under the floor at 25 Cromwell Street. 15-year-old Shirley Hubbard was the youngest of the victims. There were several 15-year-olds, but just birthday-wise. So she also was found at Cromwell Street. After her parents separated when she was 2, she was taken into care. And then on November 14th, 1974, when she was attending high school, she left work for home and she never made it. She was reported missing, but she was never found until her remains were located in the floor of the cellar. So there were 2 narrow plastic tubes that were found in her grave. They were 16 and 17 inches long. They had been inserted through the front of the mask that was on her head. So these tubes were bent upward at the end of her nostrils. Her mouth had been covered with brown tape. So these tubes were inserted into her nose as basically a way to allow her to breathe while her mouth was covered.
Like burying her alive?
It was basically just this sick sexual torture that was happening. They wanted to see her struggle. It's just horrible.
Man.
So 18-year-old Juanita Mott, she was traveling to Gloucester when she vanished the day before her friend's wedding. Her disappearance was not reported to police, though her family contacted the Missing Persons Bureau and as well as the media. Her remains were found in the cellar at 25 Cromwell Street. And then 16-year-old Allison Chambers, she went to live at a children's home in Gloucester after she ran away from home. She was known to frequently visit 25 Cromwell Street. Her parents knew that. She would write. She worked as a nanny for the West children. She eventually moved in. So she vanished in August of 1979, shortly before her 17th birthday. Her disappearance was reported to the Missing Persons Bureau. She was not found until her remains were found in the garden at 25 Cromwell Street. So in 1996, this home, this house of horrors at 25 Cromwell Street, it was demolished. and the surviving West children have stuck together in the aftermath of their parents' crimes, I should say. I will tell you that's not the case as the years went by. But they think about the fact that their mother, although she's in prison, she has been given the privilege of getting a degree in English. She's had counseling. She's had a full life of hobbies, and they describe her life behind bars as living in a bubble. Meanwhile, they're lost out in the world, not knowing how to go about their lives. They feel like they have no place to be themselves. Sadly, the West children, they're estranged from one another now. They just feel like too much has gone on. It's just all too much. And when they see each other's faces, it's just a painful reminder of what their lives were. So it's sad, that their relationships are no longer.
Yeah, I mean, you can't judge. I have
all.
No idea what it would be like to go through all that.
No judgment whatsoever. So according to Mae West, her mother is now 71 years old. She remains imprisoned at HM Prison, New Hall in West Yorkshire. She feels that as time has gone by, Rose has only become that much higher and mightier, describing her as a hypocrite who continues to try to intervene in their lives and assert some sense of control. So in 2025, Netflix released the 3-episode documentary, which I watched. It's called Fred and Rose West, a British horror story. And it features recently discovered police interview tapes with Fred that offer firsthand insight into their crimes. You can hear him saying, when he's talked about with that third thigh bone, and he's talking about Shirley Robinson and and that makes 3. I mean 2.
Oh, you can hear it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So over the course of 2 decades, 12 young victims were subjected to unimaginable horrors before they were ultimately murdered and tossed into the dirt as if their lives hadn't mattered. But their lives had mattered. They were daughters, sisters, students. They were loved. They will forever be missed. Their families are left to forever grapple to imagine the horrors of what their last moments on this earth were. And that is this tragic case of this despicable couple, Fred and Rose West.
Absolutely horrific. I don't know if I've heard a worse story. It was able to go on for so long and in front of everybody,
right.
Like you said, not in a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. Like it was, man alive. That's a sick individual, that Fred.
And what gets me is that these girls were reported missing. They were known to be at 25 Cromwell Street.
Right.
How they were able to skirt by is beyond me.
Yeah, just appearances, because the police are probably like, okay, have you heard from him? And be like, no, we're just here raising our kids. It's like, yeah, you don't think, well, let me check your basement. You probably have their bodies in the basement.
Right.
They
say they stopped by, they rented this house for a couple weeks, and then they moved on their way. And,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
that sounds about right.
Like decent targets, or a lot of them decent targets,
They were young girls. They moved about.
Ugh. Gosh.
But just so terribly sad. And, my heart goes out to the victims and their family members, because I saw a lot of the interviews of the family members in this Netflix documentary that I mentioned. And it was just heartbreaking that after all this time, forever, they're going to feel the pain, but that the pain is still so raw. It never goes away.
No.
And, again, my hearts go out to you, anyone who has lost anyone that they loved at the hands of this despicable couple, Fred and Rose West. Obviously, Fred is no longer here. He's rotting in hell or wherever. But Rose is still just, taking her hobbies.
She's just a 70-year-old piece of shit in jail. Mm-hmm. So, Rose, you should off yourself, too. That'd be good. So thank you for telling the story. Terrible, terrible story. And if you want to listen to more stories, horrible stories, and you have a sickness, interested in these true crimes,
it is fascinating that humans are so interested in these, because we can't wrap our heads around what would possess people to do what they do. It's just like we're watching the Netflix with Ed Gein.
Yeah,
that one was a bit much for me. Even
it's so horrible. I'm just kidding about the sickness.
We all have that, morbid curiosity of what would drive a human being, because we're all humans here. What would make one person do such horrible things to another?
Yeah, like on the cellular level, we're all the same, right? And it's just like, okay, but this guy's got these multiple, I don't even know about personality. It seemed like Rose had some different personalities, like the one sweetness and making cupcakes and having a family time, and the motherly thing. Mm-hmm. But then she gets off on beating the crap out of her kids and doing sexual stuff. Like, it's just insane. I don't get it.
Right. Nothing normal was happening in this house. When you're half of their
Some normal.
children, it sounds like, were not born to Fred.
Right.
You know, that in itself, when you've got multiple men coming through like a revolving door, that in itself for children is like, what's going on here?
A little confusing. But
Very confusing.
that was their normal too. So I don't know if it was, I don't know.
But you go to your friend's house and you're like, that mom doesn't have men coming into her bedroom.
Yeah.
They don't have tenants upstairs that are young girls that are disappearing.
She's not pregnant every 10 months.
Right.
It's crazy. But thank you for telling the story. It's important just to be aware of what's going on out there. You never know.
And it's just sad that, you know, these children, like their home and their family should have been their safe space, and it was anything but. They would have these moments at school where they felt safe, and then they ultimately had to come home at the end of the day.
Like school was the best place, and they had to come home. And
That's where they felt safe, was at school.
Right.
So just very sad, and my heart breaks for the West children as well.
Yep.
But anyway, we thank you guys. I'm sorry, Mike. I think I just cut you off.
Yeah, like third time.
I'm so
That's
sorry.
okay.
Third time.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm not keeping count, but it's the fourth time. So you just did it
don't
again.
exaggerate.
You just did it again. I'm just kidding.
Don't exaggerate.
We're gonna have a little tickle fight after this.
No, we will not.
No, we will not. And if you want to hear more stories from a Crime and Coffee couple, every Wednesday we come out with a new bonus episode. So, you know, depending on if you want to be a patron or an Apple subscriber, please go ahead and check us out.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm wearing a sweater.
Oh.
And, you know, it may be November 2nd, but we're in Florida. It's hot. This sweater is from Walmart. It's really soft and cute, and it was like $23.
And there's no, like, we're not sponsored by any of these things. Just kind of putting it out there in case you want it. I'd say Walmart has some pretty decent clothes.
They have some decent stuff. I'm actually really surprised at the quality of the sweater, but my point is that I'm wearing it and I'm under these really hot lights. And I told Mike while we were recording, I'm like, it's really hot in here. He's
Yeah,
like, he goes, you're wearing a sweater.
We had to stop in the middle at some point. It was I'm like, you're wearing a sweater and you're getting angry about something.
I was getting very angry. My computer was blowing up with text messages.
So we had to stop and like, we're going to take that out. But
Thank goodness you're here to calm me down.
Yeah, I'm like, it's just text messages. You're like, I can't believe I'm getting text like at this time. I'm like, it's just text. You just don't look at them.
In other words, Allison is a psychopath.
Yes, we all know that.
But on that note, we thank you guys so much for being here, for listening to us. Tell your friends, have your friends tell their friends. And neighbors.
Coworkers.
Anybody.
Right.
But we thank you. We will be back on Wednesday with a bonus episode and the next Sunday with a regularly scheduled episode. And until next time, bye.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.